Las Vegas Sportsline is owned and produced by Vegas Sportsline, LLC. All opinions expressed by the hosts or guests are their own and are not endorsed by either radio station management or any of its advertisers.
It's time for the Las Vegas Sportsline, brought to you by the Sunset Station with sports director Chuck Esposito. Presented by WagerTalk.com.
Okay, here we go. It is a Monday edition. We're back after the weekend. I'm Dave Kochen. Marco D'Angelo's here. It is our Station Casinos Monday, which means Chuck Esposito from Sunset Station is joining us. We got Ari Platinum on the console. And we got a lot to talk about today. It's a fun weekend. Chuck, how are you?
I'm doing good. You're right. It was a fun weekend. We had a new football league
yes.
kick off. And, now that pro football's done, you start talking about the college basketball tournament not that far away. We're ready for our contest, last man standing. So a lot of cool stuff, guys. Yeah,
and we'll talk about last man standing in a little bit. Let's talk first about the American Alliance of Football. Is that what it's called? Yeah. One thing's for sure. It's been a chalk league so far. All four home favorites got there. Christian Hackenberg put 0 up for his team. What was the betting action like? Was there some volume?
A little bit. I think, like on our side of the counter, the other side of the counter, it's a little bit wait and see. There was more chatter about coaches than players, which is a little strange. I mean, I think the league needs some, marquee players to help kind of boost the image. But, it was decent to watch. I can't say that I watched every game and a lot of the games that I watched, but I did watch some. From our side, we're moving them much more aggressively. Limits are lower. There's no field goals, no extra points. So, threes and sixes maybe are a little bit different than they would be in pro football. But overall, I think it was, okay to get started.
Yeah, Chuck, you could put the over-under on how many minutes I watched the same prop as you had for Tom Brady total rushing yards. For me, I didn't watch any this week. I'll get into it, but I'm surprised that the betting windows, had the action that they had so far.
People love football.
Give them credit. They brought the league out, whether it really was ready or not. They brought it right out after the Super Bowl, which obviously was smart while you still had, the hangover effect of the Super Bowl. So we'll see how they do. I remember back in the old days, and I know you do, Dave, too. Remember the USFL when it first came out?
I remember the USFL well. I loved that league.
Yeah, it was crushing for the Cappers because, everything went true to form as far as it should go, and, the books just couldn't put numbers the right way. They kept covering. So we'll see if this happens now and see what the adjustments are after week 1.
Well, I know one thing. It's fun, and it's another betting option, and that's just terrific. I know one game that got a lot of action this weekend, and we're going to get into some NCAA basketball talk. Duke, Virginia was real good business for the books. I'm assuming that even though Virginia's regarded as a tremendously tough team, Chuck, was most of the action on Duke here?
It was. I mean, there was some early action on Virginia. I thought all along we had the wrong favorite on the board, to be perfectly honest with you. I thought there was a couple of games where it was the wrong favorite. But, there was really good action on that game.
Well, let's talk about Duke because they are now the clear favorite as far as the betting's concerned to win the NCAA tournament. Actually, odds of less than 2-1. On Duke at this point, which is not a great bet, obviously, because it's pretty tough to get through that field. But if they're knocking down shots like they did against Virginia, good luck trying to beat them.
I mean, their inside-out game when that occurs is like unbelievable. I mean, you're talking about a team that's 21-2, and the fact that they can knock down the shots, and we know how good they are in the paint and around the rim, awfully dangerous, guys. It just seems like Virginia always has that. We know they can play some good defense, but in a game that's going to be a little bit more up-tempo or there's some points scored, Virginia's going to struggle, and I think that was the case on Saturday against Duke.
Well, you hit the key, Chuck, with the inside-out game. Whenever they kicked it outside, they were 13 of 21 from three-point range. I don't care how good your defense is. when you're knocking them down like that, they're unbeatable. And Duke right now, heading in, is the most complete team, obviously. They got two of the best players in the country. And, we always see that, when you get these teams moving forward in the big dance that rely, mainly on one guy, if he has that one game that, he's off or gets into foul trouble, and then that team can go down, where with Duke, you've got two guys that can carry the load here. They're going to be tough to beat.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's fun, though, watching, Tennessee as well as they play, too. Their style of play. We know how good Gonzaga can be. Kentucky, Michigan. I mean, you look at the top 10, I think there's only maybe one team that has 4 losses or more, and that's North Carolina. Depending, I guess you could throw Marquette in that range as well. But you've got a lot of 1- and 2-loss teams in the top 10. So it's going to be interesting, guys, for sure.
Well, we got a big game in the SEC come Saturday, Tennessee and Kentucky. That's going to tell us a lot about the Tennessee team because talent-wise, they're as talented as anybody, but they're one of those teams that, they haven't reached that next level. Can they do it and go forward? And right now, Kentucky, you talk about a team peaking at the right time. This team's they're playing so well right now, and we've seen it's like Kentucky – you see them year after year. It's like watching the movie Groundhog Day. Start out a little bit slow because they got to reload, and then you see them gain momentum January, February, and they peak at the right time in March.
And here's the other thing, though, on Kentucky, Chuck. This Kentucky team can play half-court offense. So now you've got all this length and athleticism, but the knock on Kentucky in the past few years actually has been, offensively they have trouble running really good stuff. This team is now running really good half-court offense. I think they're a threat to win the whole thing.
Yeah, I do too. And it's funny that Marco says that about how they get off to a slow start. I can always hear Calipari, after the first several games talking. I can hear his voice now. We're not very good. And, we're just trying to feel our way. And we know we're not as good as a lot of those other schools. And it's the same speech every year. And yet around this time is when they really start to turn it on.
Michigan State. Where do you separate these two teams? Athletically, I think Michigan's the better team, but I still like Michigan State, even though they've struggled, a few games here recently. I think when it's said and done, Michigan State is the team that comes out of the Big Ten.
I do too, but I was a little concerned with how they've struggled a little bit of late. I liked them early in the season. I still like the way that they're coached. But I was a little concerned with the way that they played a little bit lately. But that's what's so great. I think when you get to tournament time, that's what makes it, conference tournaments. That's what makes it so great with these teams who can really step it up and some of these rivalries in there. I mean, it's even fun to be able to talk about UNR in the top 10 and how well they played.
And we've got to talk about them and Gonzaga because we haven't talked about the West Coast teams.
UNR, I mean, they're a really good team. It's going to be fun to watch them play too, and it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully, they get kept out west with Gonzaga.
I think Nevada at this point, at worst, is going to be a 2 seed, and they're scary good because they're so deep and so experienced. I mean, they're basically, I think they're like the oldest team in the country in terms of age, with all these graduate transfers and stuff like that, and. We saw what they wanted to play on Saturday against New Mexico. They had the revenge game, and they were embarrassed down in Albuquerque. And I mean, it's 32-9 immediately in the game, and it's like, holy crap! I mean, it's one thing to want to send a message to the other team, but being able to do it like that, it's scary how good this team is. I don't know how anybody in the Mountain West even has a chance against them.
Well, you said it though, Dave. I think when you look at a team that's older, and although they have some graduate transfers and they've got kids that have been there, I think that just changes the whole dynamics of college basketball. I know we've talked about it, but so many of these schools have these kids that are one and done, and then come tournament time, teams that we expect or schools that we expect to be much better aren't because they don't have anything to pull from. And here you look at a team like UNR, and I think they will have something to pull from and experiences, which I think makes them even more dangerous come tournament time.
Well, they should have beaten Loyola last year and got a little unlucky in that game, to put it simply.
True.
And they're better than they were last year. To me, anybody who's calling Nevada a dark horse at this point, They're crazy.
They're definitely not a dark horse.
No, they're real.
Talk about a team in the top 10. They are not a dark horse with one loss.
Yeah, last year's experience is only going to serve them better. And you look at this team, the way they're playing, I think they're going to, they're still kind of underrated. They're flying under the radar as far as the national scope goes, because how many people watch the Mountain West Conference if you're not out here? So they don't realize how good this team is. I like them. I think they can go deep in here. And, like you said, the Loyola game last year, they didn't have Sister Jean on their side. They didn't have a chance. When it was going to come down to luck, I'm sorry. You had God on Loyola's side with Sister Jean.
I don't know what it was, but all of it, Loyola could not miss a shot that mattered last year. And of course, they hit one to win that game. Now, Gonzaga is really interesting at this point because they started the season without Tilly, and we're doing fine. And then Tilly gets back, and it's like, oh, boy. Now they're really scary. Now Tilly gets hurt again.
Right.
He's at least done until the tournament and probably done for the season. So how much does that diminish their chances of making a Final Four run?
I think it hurts a lot. I think you look at what he averages and points and rebounds and how talented that he is. Maybe he's back for the tournament. They're saying it's just through the regular season, but without him, they would not be one of the teams that I would circle as a Final Four team if he's not back.
I think if they happen to end up in a 1-2 line in the West with Nevada, I think Nevada beats Gonzaga.
Yeah, I think, again, based on what we talked about, and when you can pull from that experience for kids that have been there and gone through it, which so many programs can't say in today's college hoops, I think that's a big part of it, and I wouldn't disagree with that.
Let me go back to Virginia for a moment. Look, I know Duke hit all these shots on Saturday, and it's not like Virginia played a bad game. They forced Duke to shoot threes, which is not their strongest suit, and they knocked out 13 for 21. But I still just have this nagging thing about Virginia where no matter what the reason, they just don't win games that matter. And as talented as they are, as great as the system that Bennett utilizes is, I don't know. I don't think they're getting knocked out by a 16 again, like happened last year in the upset of the century. But somebody's going to get them again. They're either unlucky or just unclutch.
Well, I think maybe unlucky. You took Duke, as we talked about earlier. They shot over 60% from the three-point line in that game. If you look at the way Virginia played them around the rim, they forced them out of their game, and Duke hit the shot. I think strategically they did what they wanted to do, and that was limit the opportunities around the glass and around the rim, and Duke hit the shot. So I think unlucky is the right thing right now. I still think Virginia is a really good team. Depending on where they're at, I could easily pencil them in as a Final Four team, and we'll have to wait and see. But for me, they were more unlucky than anything else.
That was just a case of Duke just playing the perfect game. And did you see how short Duke's rotation was, though, in that game, too?
But you know what? Short rotation in the NCAA tournament's not a bad thing.
If Duke doesn't hit the threes at that pace, if they just hit what they average, my guess is that Virginia wins easily, at least by maybe 3 buckets and maybe double digits.
It's a backbreaker.
It's unlucky.
Every time you make a run, and you have an opportunity, and they hit one of those clutch threes. That's, it took the crowd. It took the crowd out of it. You couldn't get the crowd into it. Chuck, of the teams we've talked about, do you guys have any liability on futures to any of those?
We always do. I think when you're looking at teams that had longer odds when the season started, that's what you're going to see some liability on. It's like anything else. We don't see that big play on some of the favorites, but I think when you look at teams that Maryland for one, although they've come back to earth a little bit, there has been some play on Maryland with higher odds, some play on Purdue with higher odds. So they're definitely looking for some value, especially as wide open as it can be for teams to start to get to the Sweet 16 and Elite Eight.
So let's talk about a few more teams. We've got a couple in the Big East worth mentioning, Villanova and Marquette. We've got one in the AAC that is way under the radar, actually. Nobody's talking about Houston. They just keep winning basketball. They got one loss. Let's size up those teams as well. Villanova, we know they're going to be tough come tournament time because Jay Wright is as good as it gets at tournament time. Marquette and Houston are both interesting because on the right night, I think they can play with anybody, but I don't know if those right nights will show up in the tournament.
Well, I mean, you talk about Houston. They were the 54th team listed on our future book odds going into the season. If you have a ticket